This is Evangelist Henry Walker. Thank you for tuning into our podcast. Maybe you're listening to the podcast on my website, henrywalker.org, under audio messages, or maybe you're listening to the podcast on podpoint.com/Henry Walker. That's podpoint.com/Henry Walker. Or maybe listen to this podcast on my YouTube channel, New Life Revival International Henry Walker. New Life Revival International Henry Walker. We want to start a new message today talking about the night watches, but also watching in general in these last days, being alert. Let's go to Father in prayer. Father, I thank you for another opportunity to minister to your people. Father, I ask you to use me just the way you want, Father. Let me say only what you want me to say, nothing more and nothing less. Help people, Father, open up their spirits, Father, and not only receive the word, but study the word for themselves. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father. In the mighty name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. Let's go to the Song of Solomon. Song of Solomon is right after Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastics, before Isaiah. Again, we're talking about the night watches, watching in general. What are some of the things that the Father wants to reveal and do for us during the night seasons? Remember, the night watches run from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m., and 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. are the 12 hours of the day. Yahshua said, are there not 12 hours in the day? The day starts at 6 p.m., so it's important between 6 and 9 p.m. to start praying for that day up ahead. I have a sample prayer on my website at henrywalker.org under written messages. See, a lot of people will wait. I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I got to start on the day. No, it's already like 9 hours late. It's 6 p.m. starts the day. Again, what does he want to show us during these night watches? What does he want to do for us during these night watches? The Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 6. This is his position with us during the night seasons. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand doth embrace me. He's got his left hand under our heads, and his right hand he embraces us. He just loves to help us during the night seasons, comfort us. Anything that it might be troubled about, he wants to solve it before daybreak and talk to us through dreams and visions. Like in verse 10, my beloved spoke and said unto me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. Come away means that he might give us a dream or a vision, talking to us. It's beautiful when we're relaxed and sleeping, how he can help us and talk to us, communicate with us. Again, any situations that may have been troubling to us, he just solves it during the night. He can talk to so many people on our behalf during the night seasons. He can give dreams to other people about us during the night seasons. So important. In verse 15, take us, the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. Anything that could be trying to rob your peace with the Father, he'll work on it during the night seasons. And it's important during the night seasons, when he wakes you up, he might put somebody on your heart to pray for. And just watch, see the things that are happening in the world, and allow him to talk to you during the night seasons about what's happening. And remember, he's got everything under control. Everything was created by him and for him, and by him all things consist. And greater is he that's in us than he that is in the world. He's the creator of the universe, and he wants to communicate with us and wants to point out things that are happening in the world and praying for people and praying for situations in the world. It's not only during the night seasons, it's during the day. Just watch, be alert. Let's go to the book of Esther. Go to the left. Just go back past Proverbs, Psalms, Job, and into the book of Esther. The book of Esther, chapter 2. Most of you know the story that there was like a beauty pageant to determine who would be the queen and take the place of Vashti. And Esther was one of them that was chosen to be in the finals, so to speak. In verse 9, and the maiden pleased him, and she attained kindness of him. This is Haggai, the keeper of the woman. And he speedily gave her things for purification, which such things as belonged to her, and 7 maidens, which were meet to be given her out of the king's house. And he preferred her and her maids unto the best place. of the house of the woman. So they're being purified, and then they have to go and spend a night with the king. In verse 14, in the evening she went, at nighttime. In the evening she went, and on the morrow she returned into the second house of the women to the custody of Shahazagaz, the king's chamberlain, which kept the concubines. She came in unto the king no more, except the king delighted in her, and that she were called by name. Verse 17, and the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in the sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. So one night with the king. Then we go to chapter 4. Mordecai heard about the decree that Haman influenced the king to sign deceitfully to kill all the Jews. And he sent a message to Esther, who's now the queen, by a servant. In verse 13, and Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shouldst escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. See, the father always has a ram in the bush. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Then Esther answered Mordecai by the servant. Verse 16, go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the Lord. And if I perish, I perish. Look at the attitude she had. And she went in before the king, and the king stretched forth his golden scepter, which means that it was okay, she wouldn't be killed for approaching the king unannounced. What she wanted was her, Haman, and the king to have a banquet that night. Then at that banquet, the king said, what else do you want me to do? He said, well, tomorrow I want another banquet. And just me, you, and Haman. And that's when she revealed that Haman is the one who wanted to kill all the Jews, including her. And so, one night with the king, chapter 6. See, Mordecai had saved the king's life. 2 people are conspiring to kill him. Chapter 6, verse 1, Esther. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of records of Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it's found written that Mordecai had told Baker and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity had been done to Mordecai for this? Then said the king's servants that witness done to him, there's nothing done for him. This is before that second banquet where Esther revealed what Haman had done and wanted to do. And so Haman, coming to the king to have Mordecai hung on the gallows that he prepared for Mordecai, verse 6. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor? Now Haman thought that in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself? And Haman answered in verse 8, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king used to wear, and a horse that the king rideth upon, and a crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princesses, that they may array the man with whom the king delighted to honor, and bring him on horseback throughout the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighted to honor. Then the king said to Haman, make haste and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sits at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Look at another beautiful blessing that happened at night, during the night seasons. See, Mordecai is the only one that would not bow down to Haman. And the father honored him. He took a stand for the father, and the father honored him. And it happened during the night seasons. There's so much the Father can do for us just by resting in His presence and thinking about Him and meditating on His Word and thinking about His promises. So again, Mordecai was starting to be blessed during the night when the Father kept up the king and had him open up to that part of the book of the records of the Chronicles where Mordecai has saved his life. It's so beautiful. In Mark 14, verse 37, you can just write it down. Yeshua said, can't you watch for me 1 hour? This is in the Garden of Gethsemane. And during that 1 hour, look, 1 hour with his father, he had the strength to go through the whole ordeal that he had to go through for us. Wow. Let's go to the book of Judges. You go back to Genesis and go forward to Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges. Judges chapter 6, again, talking about the night seasons. So many battles that the Father won for his people happened that night. We want to talk about Gideon now, how that big battle that the Father won for him happened at night. But before that, verse 25, Judges chapter 6, verse 25. And it came to pass the same night that Yahweh said unto him, Gideon, take thy father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, throw down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the grove that is by it, and build an altar unto Yahweh thy Elohim upon the top of this rock in the ordered place, and take the second bullock, and offer a burnt sacrifice with the wood of the grove which thou shalt cut down. Then Gideon took 10 men of his servants, and did as Yahweh had said unto him, and so it was, because he feared his father's household and the men of the city, that he could not do it by day, he did it by night. See, the Father worked with him. Verse 28, and when the men of the city rose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and a grove was cut down that was by it, and the second bullock was offered upon the altar that was built at nighttime. What a victory at nighttime. When you surrender everything to the Father, allow him to make us more like Yahshua, and bring the fruit of the Spirit out of our lives, love, joy, peace, longsuffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. That's Romans 8, verse 13, 29, and Galatians 5, verse 22 to 26. When you allow that to happen, you can have such a beautiful, peaceful night with him. How he works on situations that may have troubled us, like I said, before he went to sleep. He works on those situations. He can talk to people, as I mentioned, to bless us while we're asleep. There's so much he can do during the night. We need to appreciate the night seasons, especially that the day starts at 6 p.m. Remember, in Genesis, evening and morning were the first day. 6 to 9 p.m. is a great time to prepare for the day, pray for the day up ahead. And remember, the week starts on Saturday night at 6 p.m. The week up ahead. Some people say, well, I wake up Monday morning early to pray for the week up ahead. Well, it's a day and a half too late. We have to get on his timetable. In chapter 7, by this time Gideon had 300 men, but these were the men that passed the test that the Father had. And he said in verse 9, chapter 7, Judges 7, verse 9, and it came to pass the same night, at nighttime again, that Yahweh said unto them, arise, get thee down unto the host, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you fear to go down with Pharaoh thy servant down to the host. You see how he worked with Gideon. And thou shalt hear what they say, and afterwards shall thy hands be strengthened to go down unto the host. See, the Father already knew what they were saying, so he wanted Gideon to hear what they're saying. He went down with Pharaoh his servant, and unto the outside of the armed men that were in the host, and the Midianites and the Amalekites and all the children of the east lay along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude. That doesn't influence the Father. It doesn't get him nervous. And their camels were without number, as the sand by the seaside for multitude. And when Gideon was come, behold, there was a man that told the dream unto his fellow, and said, behold, I dreamed a dream, and lo, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the host of Midian, and came unto a tent, and smote it, that it fell, and overturned, that the tent lay along. And his fellow answered and said, this is nothing else save the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, a man of Israel, for into his hand had the father delivered Midian and all the host. When Gideon heard this, in verse 15, and he heard the telling of the dream and the interpretation thereof, that he worshipped and returned into the host of Israel and said, arise, for Yahweh had given into your hand the host of Midian. Look at how the Father encouraged him during the night seasons. He put a fear transfer on the enemy. Remember, Gideon was chosen, he was threshing wheat by where the grapes were. He was hiding out. And the Father called him a mighty man of valor. But there's a fear that was upon him. And the Father took that fear and put it on the enemy. The message on my website, the written messages and audio message about the fear transfer. So he was really encouraged, and he had 3 groups of 100 men each. Gideon said, when I blow the trumpet and smash the light, you do the same thing. And shout, the sword of Yahweh, even the sword of Gideon. See, all Yahweh needed, he said, I'm going to save my people from the Midianites with you. All I need is you. That's actually what happened. At nighttime, this battle, quote unquote, took place, and they started killing each other. They were so afraid of that dream, that fear that was going throughout all the enemy's camp. They thought that Gideon had such a large army, and they were there attacking them, and they started killing each other. So be encouraged what the Father can do during the night seasons for us, and how he can communicate with us, how he can comfort us if something's on our minds bothering us. So take advantage of the night seasons with the Father. He can do so much, as I mentioned, while we're resting in his arms. Remember, as I mentioned before, as we're resting in his arms, his left hand is under our head, and his right hand doth embrace us. He knows we need rest, and it's so beautiful to rest in him. After submitting everything to him, just rest in his presence, abiding in the secret place with him, abiding in his pavilion from the strife of tongues, abiding under the shadow of the Almighty. It's so beautiful. Take advantage of the night seasons. It's a blessing. Let's go to the book of Exodus, chapter 12. Just go to the left to Exodus, right to Genesis, chapter 12. Again, we're talking about the night seasons and how the Father can do so much at night for us as we rest in him. With his left hand, as I mentioned, under our heads, and his right hand embracing us. Exodus chapter 12 and verse 29. This is right after the Passover, when the Father had smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt. Verse 29, and it came to pass that at midnight, Yahweh smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne, unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt. There was not a house where there was not one dead. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night, and said, Rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve Yahweh as you have said. Also take your flocks and your herds as you have said, and be gone and bless me also. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste, for they said, We are all dead men. Verse 35, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and clothing. And Yahweh gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. Look what happened at night. What can he do for us at night? By just surrendering to him and resting in his presence. Again, with his left hand under our heads and his right hand embracing us. How beautiful are the night seasons in his sight. And it should be beautiful in our sight too, as the King of the universe spends time with us and ministers to us when we're resting in him. Can't say it enough. With his left hand under our head and his right hand embracing us. In chapter 13, Exodus chapter 13, verse 21, and Yahweh went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light to go by day and night. Look how he led them at night with the pillar of fire. He wants to give us fresh direction at night. It's such a beautiful time just to rest in him and listen to him. Chapter 14, they're at the Red Sea and the enemy's coming behind them. Verse 19, Exodus chapter 14, verse 19. And the Father, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and a pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them, and it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud of darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. They were totally protected. Verse 21, and Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and Yahweh caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. Wow. Look what happened at night. He delivered them at night. He can deliver us from any habits we may have that are not from him at night. Again, with his left hand under our head and his right hand embracing us. He just set us free as we just relax in his presence. In verse 22, and the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on the left. Remember we talked about Jonathan and his armor bearer in 1 Samuel 14. There was a sharp rock on one side, a sharp rock on the other side. The Father protected them as they went against the enemy. The Father did great things to just 2 people. Took the half acre of land. They killed 20 men in that first slaughter, and then the Father just did the rest. An earthquake came, and there was a trembling. The enemy started killing each other. In verse 24, and it came to pass that in the morning watch, that's the 4th watch of the night, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. Remember, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m., 9 p.m., 12 a.m., 12 a.m. and 3 a.m., and 3 a.m. to 6 a.m. 4th watch of the night, the same watch that Yahshua walked on the water. And during that watch, 3 a.m. to 6 a.m., so many people could be going through the darkest part of the night. The Father may wake you up to pray for them. Again, verse 24, it came to pass that in the morning watch, Yahweh looked upon the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drove them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Father fought for them against the Egyptians. Man, they didn't have to do much. The Father did everything during that 4th watch of the night. How much can He do for us during the night seasons? Wow. Remember in Luke chapter 2, verse 8, you can just write it down, how the shepherds were watching over their flock at night. So important for pastors to be praying over their flock, the congregations, at nighttime. Special anointed time. In Acts 20, verse 31, Acts 20, verse 31, Paul said, watch and remember what I taught you. Watch and remember what I taught you. It's so beautiful during the night season. Just remember what the Father has taught us and meditate upon that. And get ready for the daylight up ahead. He can give us fresh instructions during the night as the daylight approaches. In 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verse 23, watch and stand fast in faith. He'll strengthen us during the night to stand fast on what we believe. Stand fast against temptation. Stand fast. Meditate on His word. Remember Joshua, before he went around Jericho, he was meditating on the Father's word, meditating on the Father's word. And I'm sure as he went around Jericho those 13 times, once a day for the 6 days and 7 times on the 7th day, he was meditating on what the Father said. At that 13th time going around, shout. I'm sure he was meditating on what the Father said in chapter 6, verse 1, Joshua. Verse 2, and Yahweh said unto Joshua, see, I've given into your hand Jericho, and the king thereof, and the mighty men of God. The way the Father spoke, I've given you Jericho. Before it ever went around it, I've given you Jericho. He's meditating on that. What promises has the Father given to you that you need to meditate upon? In Colossians 4, verse 2, Colossians 4, verse 2, just write it down. Watch the same with thanksgiving. Watch. Let's think about what He's done for us already. He's not going to stop now. He's still going to bless us. He's still going to comfort us. Be thankful for what He has done. So it's important as we summarize, you see what the Father's talking about. The night seasons, He wants to encourage us. Again, with His left hand under our head and His right hand embracing us. That's the way He is. He loves when we sleep. He wants us to sleep and relax in Him. And He wants to comfort us at the same time and win victories for us at the same time. Bless us at the same time. Talk to people on our behalf to bless us at night. It's so important. And before we go on, I want to pray for the unborn children. This is a pro-life ministry. We believe life begins at conception. Join with me as we pray for the unborn children in the womb. Father, I ask you to touch the babies in the womb, Father. Bring them to the full birth, Father. And Father, we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yeshua, by the blood of Yeshua. And if any of you out there had an abortion, ask the Father to forgive you, repent, and go on and serve Him. Back in Genesis, as we get ready to close, Genesis 32, this is where Esau was coming towards Jacob, and Jacob was really afraid, because Jacob had robbed his birthright and deceived his father into giving him the blessing. And he was concerned about Esau in Genesis 32, verse 22. And he rose up that night and took his 2 wives and his 2 women servants, Jacob did, and his 11 sons, and passed over the ford Jabbok. And he took them and sent them over the brook and sent over that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and he wrestled the man with him until the breaking of the day. This happened at nighttime. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. And he said, let me go, for the daybreak. And he said, I will not let you go, except you bless me. And he said unto him, what is thy name? He said, Jacob. He said, thy name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel, for as a prince thou hast power with the Father, and with man it has prevailed. Look how he got blessed. Esau came and had a wonderful reunion. Said, Father can bless us so much at night, whatever you're concerned about. He can work it out with, what was I concerned about? So Father can work so much at night. So take advantage of it. Just make sure you surrender everything to the Father and watch how he moves, especially during the night seasons. I want to tell you some more about this ministry. Every week we feed some poor people in Nassau, the Bahamas. If you want to help us in that regard, this is a 501c3 organization. Every gift is tax deductible. You can just go to henrywalker.org and click on donate, or go to podpoint.com/Henry Walker, podpoint.com/Henry Walker, hit donate. And while you're there, you can also subscribe to the podcast, and you'll be notified of every new message. So it's henrywalker.org, click on donate, or podpoint.com/Henry Walker. If you want to email me, you can go to contact, contact, at henrywalker.org, contact@henrywalker.org, or go to my website at henrywalker.org and click on contact. If you have any praise reports, any questions, I'll be so glad to hear from you. And if you enjoy these podcasts, tell other people about these podcasts and share. I'd really appreciate that very much. Let's go to Father in prayer right now. Put your hand on a computer or on your cell phone. And if you don't know that you're saved, just surrender everything to the Father and follow him. And those of you who have surrendered everything to the Father, believe for a miracle right now. Any growths, any tumors, any diseases that are represented out there, I curse you, growths, tumors, diseases. Die right now. Disappear. Don't return from the people. Go right now in the name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. The Father touched people from the top of their heads to the soles of their feet. Wherever else they need a miracle, Father, because they surrendered everything to you, Father, they should do miracle and miracles if necessary in their lives right now, Father. And we give you all the praise and the honor, Father, in the mighty name of Yahshua, by the blood of Yahshua. And remember to next time, this is Evangelist Henry Walker saying, greater is the Father in you, your daddy, the King of the universe, than he that is in the world.